Guys, what happened? Welcome, everyone. This is the instant match reaction, joined by Neil from Beyond the 90, Luke from Beyond the 90, and how are we feeling? This is the instant match reaction, joined by Neil from Beyond the 90.
I'm good, brother. I'm good. How are you?
Beyond the 90, and how are we feeling?
I've got an echo as well.
I fixed it. I fixed it. Let's go.
Cool. That's fine. Overall, I'm proud of what they performed. You can see what we're building. You can see now that the window's closed where we need to strengthen, and we've brought the players in. On another day, we get another result. However, I think we were just mentioning it while watching the game. We can't turn this into 14-15 because this is the problem that we had in 14-15 where we were losing games and moments because of that. I'm going to go specifically into why I think that's not going to happen. Later on probably, but yeah, I'm really happy considering we've played Tottenham, which were a top European team, and Villa, which are now a European team as well. I think we're in a really good place. So yeah, roll on the rest of it, because I think hopefully now we've got the window closed and we've got the international break coming up. There's definitely room for improvement, and the only way is up, really, in my opinion.
Luke, talk to me. How are you feeling?
I'm with you, Neil. I do see that like there is positives, and it wasn't an absolute belting, but I am a little flustered this game. I felt like we did better than I actually anticipated, and I really felt like we deserved to come away with something from this game, but we haven't. But still things to build upon. How are you feeling about it, Neil?
Yes, just everyone said. I think Neil summed it up beautifully, actually. This really felt like the 14-15 season. So the story of that season, we get promoted. We play pretty well in a lot of games, especially early on, but you just don't get your just desserts. And you think back after the game and you think, we were unlucky to not at least get a point out of it, maybe even win. But in the brutal reality of the Premier League season, it's 0 points again, and you're looking nervously at the table and you keep getting cut adrift, and we were bottom for a while, and that's sort of where we were. But you know what? Let's use some kind of stats and stuff to give us some backup. So here are the stats. It finished 2-1 to Aston Villa. But for the first time this season, we had more possession than the opposition. And you can see that we had quite a bit more possession. So 57% compared to the 43. However, what we do have to say, to be fair to Villa, is if you look at the XG, whether you believe in that stat or not, you can see that they averaged better quality chances. Whereas with us, we only had an XG of 0.39, which seems a bit low to me. We scored a good goal, which we'll come to in a moment. But if you look at the big chances, 1 for us, 4 for Villa. I think especially in that first half, Mads made an amazing save that, was to stop Watkins getting in one-on-one, and Watkins again had another chance. So I think that's where that's coming from. Shots, you can see that we had 9 compared to their 10, 3 saves from them. They had more corners, but look, overall we had more passes, tackles, free kicks, and I think you'd have to say control. That for me was the sort of big difference, I think, with this particular game. Coming on to the stats, this is sort of just taken live, and this is impartial, so it doesn't necessarily mean that we agree or disagree with this, but this is how SofaScore is rating it. And what can we see here? You can see that some players had very strong games. Jordan Ayew, Victor Christensen, Mads Hermansen. I think we'll talk about all 3 of those. I don't think it's unfair to say that those guys had good games. You can see for Villa were kind of off it today, if we're being honest. But you can see that probably... Actually, it says, according to this, man of the match was actually Victor Christensen, but for Villa, Yuri Tillemans was their man of the match. Amadou Onana, I think he had a good game despite his early booking. Luca Digne there, and Martinez sort of doing well. So that's sort of where it is. And right, yeah, let's go through the lineups quickly. So this was us. Now, I'm sure we've got a lot to say this. It's interesting that we're already seeing a lot of comments like we should start playing in the first half, not the second half. I've got my opinion on that, but I tell you what, Neil, you talk to me. Here was our lineup. What did you make of this?
Sure. So we basically went into a 4-3-3. Again, it's slightly different to the formation we've got up there. But again, it was similar where a lot of these players played on Tuesday. And considering that, just before we even get into the formation, I think they did really well considering they played 2 games in a week. Yes, there were 2 completely different sides, in a League 2 side and a Champions League side. But in terms of that, we started with Jamie Vardy up front, who came back into the team. Fatau came into the team, and who else? I think Christensen came into
Okoli.
the team as well.
Okoli did play in the middle of the week. He did play in the middle of the week.
Yes. Yeah. So for that, and then James Justin came in as well. as the players. But Jordan Ayew, again, because of Jamie Vardy, was pushed over to the left-hand side. Wilfred Ndidi was playing kind of at the cam in the 4-4-2 out of possession, but was also playing alongside a three in the midfield, which we'll get into in a little bit. And yeah, that's how we set up with this. So for this, surprising, I think the surprises coming into the game, Okoli, we'll get on to probably him, but that was probably one of the surprises. Probably seeing Jordan Ayew. A lot of people probably would have thought Deco Reed would have played, especially with Mavididi getting 90 minutes, but Jordan Ayew kept his place as well. And there wasn't too many surprises, but I say them two were the main two surprises.
Luke, what did you make of this lineup? Probably not the best fan, I would imagine.
To be honest with you, like he actually had a decent game with Okoli, but yeah, Okoli for me was the only surprise. I wasn't actually surprised, even though I didn't predict it to have three central defensive midfielders in the starting 11. But in my opinion, I think that comment earlier was harsh. I thought the first half we were actually quite decent defensively, had a lot of possession, a lot more than we expected. Yeah, we conceded that goal and that was frustrating, but in my opinion, I think that we had a decent first half.
Yeah, lots of interesting comments here. We've got the typical, if we Jenny roll out Cam and Ndidi one more time, I'm going to lose it. Ndidi's touch was horrific. I'm going to argue a little bit differently here, right? So I think this was the formation because Ndidi was playing, as you said, when we were playing in the rest defense 4-4-2, he was pressing up next to Vardy. And then Christensen was doing his trademark bombing on the left-hand side. Jordan Ayew would drift in a little bit infield when we had the ball. So I think this is how we set up. And Okoli then moved over to the left side of defense. We're in possession. Now, I do think that in that first half, we did not have that much creativity, but we had more possession. And this is the thing that I was saying to, I think, a few people prior to the match, that against Fulham and Spurs, we basically couldn't instigate our style of play on the opposition. So I think that what Cooper was trying to do is for the first 60 minutes, he just wanted to make sure that the game was competitive. We were in the game, that we were controlling the game. And then he would bring on his attacking players later. And that is exactly what he did, by the way. Now, I think, unfortunately, we went 2-0 down in that first 60 minutes. But I think we were a bit unlucky to be 2-0 down, is my opinion. We'll kind of come to that in a moment. Let me just run through the Villa lineup before I kind of come more to some of our specific players. So Villa, we predicted more or less what they were going to do. I think surprises for me is they played this Bogard. I wasn't too familiar with him at right back, and he got taken off. Well, I've left Fatau in. That's a lie. It wasn't him on that side, but it was Leon Bailey who got taken off later. Editors will get fired for that one. But otherwise, Yuri Tielemans was in there. Onana, who had a strong game. Rogers was moving about. John McGinn. So yeah, pretty much as expected there. But let's kind of run through some of our players and the story of the game. And just before you do, would appreciate if you smash the like and subscribe to all of the channels here. So that's for Fox 8 TV, Beyond the 90, and Leicester City Down Under. Let's go with Mads. What did we make of Mads in this game?
I thought he had a great game. I thought he kept us in at that first half, made some great saves. Got to see him push out further than the pitch. Like we like seeing him as that sweeper keeper or multiple times because we had so much possession. So that was nice to see and to know that we can still do that. I thought that he was unlucky for that first goal. That was an absolute brilliant header. What did you make of it, Neil? How did you feel about his game?
I thought when he was called upon, he delivered. And I think that's exactly what you need from a keeper. Second half, he didn't have too much to do. And he made some great saves, especially later on, which I thought was really good. But kept us in the game again. And I think we mentioned it earlier on. When we had possession, he was joining in as a sweeper keeper as well, alongside the likes of Okoli and Faes, which we've not seen too much as we've gone through the game. But he's brilliant, and considering he's so young, 24 years old? Oh, mate, he's fantastic. And the more he gets playing in the games, I think he's still adapting to the Premier League. We just can't tell because he's that good, and we don't know how high his ceiling is going to be.
Yeah, this is probably. Do you know what I really liked about today? Is I think, as you mentioned, of him coming forward to be the sweeper keeper or forming part of that central defense as a back two next to Wout Faes. Is that's something I've been calling out since pre-season because that was a big feature of his play under Enzo. And I was like, I don't know why we're bringing him back than pushing him forward sort of thing. So we got the best out of him today. And yeah, he made 2 amazing saves. He did almost give away a penalty. I don't know if you saw that when he tried to roll across with Watkins. Luckily, he got to the ball first. But look, overall, I think he was superb. Good distribution. I think he showed his saves. I agree. I think with neither goal was he at fault, and was overall very good. And that is represented in his overall kind of display. Some people are kind of asking about the story of the game and how we're feeling. And we'll touch upon that as we kind of go through the players. But I don't know if I'm speaking for everyone, but I'll give you my opinion. My opinion is despite it being a defeat, I think it was a very positive performance overall, especially as some players came in who have only just made their debut. And I think I see a team that has a chance of staying up. Points deduction is a little bit of the issue. I also think, although a lot of people are saying that we lacked creativity, I understand why we went for this setup. As I'm saying, I think the game plan was stay competitive, get in the game, make sure that we're not getting bullied so that we're able to dominate the game and then win it once we've settled into the game. And I think that game plan was working other than the goals, and the goals were high quality. And this feels like one of those where I think it's one of those weird ones because the stats maybe with the XG would contradict what I'm saying. But if I watched that game, I felt like, according to the eye test, Leicester were the better team. That's honestly how I feel. But when it came to the moments that counted, I'm not going to take it away from Villa. They scored. That was a great free set piece routine they did. And the goal in the second half, which feels brutal because it was their first shot on target in that half, it was a great header. And even though we'll come to Okoli maybe could do a touch better, if you look at the actual header and how he generates the power and the angle from running away from the ball, there's a reason why some teams were linked to like a £40 million from Durant. So what do you guys think? And then I'm going to continue going through the player. But what's your story of the game and how it went? Go, Neil.
I think it was that, to be honest with you, not to try and take it, but pretty much that. So we didn't take our opportunities. But I think when I was watching it at the time, it was, for say that Durant header, 80% of it was just a brilliant header. You say maybe 10 to 20% of it was Okoli loses his man. However, if you watch how much distance he gets not even an arm width away from Okoli and generates that power on the header. And again, when we talk about Hermansen, couldn't really do anything about it, really. That was just a good quality goal. Going back to Hermansen, I think the way we get the best out of him is we start playing possession football. And part of that is what we saw today. And part of that is also bringing in players like Buonanotte, like El Khannouss, and like potentially even Edouard that we'll talk about probably in a little bit. So Mads will only get better. I don't think he's a keeper that's, as we saw against Tottenham, that's designed to play counter-attack football. So the more we get into this, the more we've got a team that we've got 2 people per position, and the more we play against weaker opponents compared to the likes of Villa, who won't be able to score that quality goals from that little opportunities, the more I feel comfortable that we're going to stay in the Premier League.
Do you know what? I think this is a fair point that Sean's brought up. We've conceded first in all of our Premier League games. Luke, speak to me about how you felt the overall picture of the match went, and is that something we should be concerned about in terms of conceding first?
No, I'm not concerned. Look, I would be concerned if we didn't have as much possession in this game as we had a lot more possession in this game than the first 2 games. So absolutely, if it was like similar to the first 2, yeah, I would be worried. But I feel like we're a little bit unlucky. I think kind of like overall with the game, I don't see us. People keep stressing about this creativity in the midfield. I think we have it now with Bilal, and I do also completely resonate with everything that you just said with Bilal and also Buonanotte. But yeah, going to what you were saying, Anil, about being competitive for the first 60 minutes, not expecting to have as much football, and then going to the final third and bringing the attacking players, which we did. I don't think like we're going to be shaping up like this. No way against Crystal Palace. Yeah. And I just feel like the only elephant in the room is the only worrying thing is you allude to the 14-15 season and playing decent but still losing, but we didn't have a points deduction hanging over our head then. So that's the only thing that concerns me to a degree.
Yeah, I will say that, and this is why I think a lot of people are asking this in the comments. So the general sort of feeling is, okay, yes, you're right. When we put those attacking players on, we started looking a bit better, but will they start? Or Tyler says this, smart tactical changes, but he reacts late because this happened at 60 minutes. So Neil might have a different opinion, but in the 14-15 season, we were playing okay, but getting beaten. That was the story. Then in January, we made a few key signings, Robert Huth and Mark Albrighton being the big 2. They come into the team. But also, the biggest difference that we made is we went to 3 at the back. But basically, in games, is for some reason, the players were like, we're fed up of just like staying in it. We're going to try and win because we needed points. And basically, we were way more physical, way more direct. We attacked and we started winning. And that was the big difference. So I think, to be fair to maybe a lot of the fans here in the chat, they're kind of saying, but, you know, if we're going to learn something from the past, maybe rather than starting a game with the defensive players, we should just start to attack. Because if we win the games, it's going to get things going. We can talk about that later because that depends on your approach. If you want to, yeah, go. No, you're begging to say something. I can see here.
I am,
He's gagging.
Because hindsight's beautiful.
Yeah.
If we go attack that game, let's say we start with we'll put Winks on and then we play El Khannouss and Buonanotte as your number 2 high pressing number 10s. They get the position, and then you've got Onana, you've got Tillemans, you've got McGinn, you've got Watkins running at, you've got Rodgers running at you. People go, well, why don't you try and set up and then try and hit him on the counter? It's always going to be, you can never win. And again, I'm not trying to slate anybody in the comments saying we shouldn't have done that. I understand what he was doing, and to be fair, if I was the manager, I'd do exactly the same as what Cooper did with the midfield, etc. And the players that came into that, we'll get into some of them in a bit, but yeah, I think that we've got some really, really good parts of that. And the difference, I think, between this the team we've got now and the team we've got that came up last time we won the championship is the Premier League quality, and not just on the bench, but also throughout the squad. Let's say we get an injury to both our 2 defenders today, which we'll get into, but we've still got Cody to come back. We've still got Vestergaard. They know what they're doing in the Premier League. The only weak spot I would say is left back, where Luke Thomas isn't as of quality. But you look at who we brought on today. Buonanotte, Premier League experience. Mavididi, okay, he hasn't got that, but he's coming into them. Christensen's got a bit of experience, and again, champions. Well, Bologna's got experience as well. We've got a lot more experience in the squad, and much more of an older squad that came up. So I feel a lot better about this season. That we were less likely to predict a 14-15 in terms of bottom of the table until March time.
I'll ask Luke this. There's a few good comments here. So when we are setting up more defensive at the start of games, we're conceding first. That is a fact. We are overall better defensively than last season. However, it's costing us in making chances. Good comment from Scott. Similar sort of idea here. I don't know why, but I thought Cooper was a lot more positive than 3 defensive-minded midfielders. Someone can say that. Sean, get burnt now or burnt later. So he's sort of saying if you start with the attacking players, okay, you don't get burnt right away, but then you put them on later and you still ended up losing, etc., etc. There's some other interesting things here. I love the comments, by the way, guys. There's some really high quality comments today as well. My issue regarding tactics was the defensive midfielder heavy 11 and then the high tempo when it was clear Villa weren't seeking to control possession. There should have been some earlier tweaks, perhaps a number 10 on at 45. I'll ask you about that, Luke, in a second. Simon, great comment there. Great comment. To me, at half time, when it's clear they're not pressing us and okay giving us possession, indeed he could have been swapped out for Facu Buonanotte or Bilal. Doesn't change our build-up and adds final third creativity. And we'll get to them in a moment, but I think it is fair to say that the substitutions really swung this game wildly. So, Luke, what do you make of that? I'm trying to get your sense of overall the starting shape, the adaptation during the game, and the argument of should we be starting a bit more offensively, or is it right to be a bit guarded to start with and make the changes later? And by the way, I don't have an opinion here. I think it's actually a really nice discussion because I think you can make the argument either way. And as Neil would say, hindsight's a beautiful thing. If you end up winning a game, you look like a genius. And if you lose, you look like an idiot.
I think we're put in a weird, tricky position because indeed, if over the pitch, you think he can win the ball back further the pitch. He did at times. He had a poor first touch as well. So that's the caveat to that. Does he break down the creativity in the midfield when the ball turns over in transition? Yes. Yes, I believe he does. But we've put ourselves in this weird position now where Ndidi, Winks, and Skipp are 3 of our highest earners. And they all basically kind of, ideally, in my opinion, we need to be playing one of those, 2 of those 3 players as a double pivot. Now, in my opinion, I would like to go a lot more attacking, similar to as we did, but I still believe that the correct option is to have Skipp and Harry Winks as your double pivot because not only are they really good on the ball, but they're good on the ball under pressure and they can play himself out of trouble. Indeed, he can't. That's my...
No, I agree. I think there's some great comments there. And I think we've got a winning formula here. We just have to work out who it is in the team that plays and at what times. And I would also say that, for example, today, I think expecting Bilal El Khannouss to start after only being here on Thursday is unrealistic. He got half an hour, which was pretty good. You could definitely make the argument that Buonanotte should have started, but he actually came on for Tawu, which we have said in the past. Actually, if he's in the, I don't know if he's in the chat or not, but shout out to Josh, who was pointing that out to me in the transfer deadline show yesterday. Let's start going through some more of the players, though, and we can talk about this. But it's a really good conversation. So Victor Christensen, he was actually our highest ranked player. Now, that's pretty crazy because there's a lot of hatred for him here in the chat. Does Christensen not know you cannot cross the ball to a small centre forward marked by two giant centre backs? I do get the point. I'm not going to sort of say that. That said, I think sometimes there was a moment in that second half where we put the cross in. It didn't come to anyone, but then the ricochet and it could have gone anywhere, and I liked it. It was like chaotic. It was like I can see us actually kind of scoring off that. So let me go to you, Luke, first. What did you make of Victor Christensen's game overall?
I'm going to be controversial. I don't think he had nowhere near as a good game as his score suggests, and or his rating. In my opinion, if you removed his cross from his game, what does he bring to you? Because I'll be honest, if you're playing the ball on the ground and keeping it at his feet and build up, he is sorely lacking, in my opinion. And I think JJ is a better defender. I know that's probably going to sound harsh, and football's all about opinions, but I'm still screaming for JJ and Pereira to be our fullbacks. I don't feel like, other than a cross, he's not really good. Any like really strengths for me personally. I'm curious to see what you guys think, and if you think that's harsh, though.
I don't think that's harsh. I can definitely buy the argument. Neil, what do you think about his overall game?
I thought he had a decent game. I'm trying to think who he was up against one-on-one. Who was it? For
Leon Bailey to begin with, and then later on they took him off and they put on Ramsey. And in fact, well, just to interrupt you, Neil. So what I think the story of the game is Emery was kind of interesting. So Bailey got injured early, so he brings on Jacob Ramsey. Jacob Ramsey was doing okay, but then in the second half, it was the introduction of Steffi Mavididi on that left-hand side, where all of a sudden Christensen and Mavididi started monstering that left-hand side, and that's where our equaliser came from. And equally, Buonanotte came on the other side. And how Emery reacted, fair play to him, is he made subs immediately, and he took off Bogard, and he took off Ramsey, and he also put on Ian Matson. So he put Ian Matson on against Buonanotte, and then he decided to change up. So even though Ramsey was a substitute, he substituted the substitute. And then after that, it quietened down a little bit and it kind of broke the game. So I think it's interesting because I feel that like Christensen at times wasn't doing that good, but there was definitely a point in the game where look, maybe it was more Mavididi, but the two combining together were starting to cause problems. Brookline's here. Christensen has no change of pace. It's all fast. Did he connect any good passes? I think he did, but I am sort of buying the argument. But I don't want to speak for you, so I'll give my opinion in a second. But what do you think about Victor Christensen then? Neil, sorry.
It's all good. I think he was decent. I think something you mentioned, the fact that we didn't. Ramsey's a good player, and he's been shown to have got Premier League quality. I think he played him really well. Defensively, going forward is when you notice him, but I think off the ball, I think his challenging was good. I think his marking was decent. I can understand where people's frustration is because he's not the most creative going forward player. However, at the end of the day, a fullback is designed to defend, and he did the defensive side of his game pretty well. You could say that the other players were quiet and because some of them are off, but also that's because I think Christensen did a good job as well.
Yeah, so some good comments here. So I've got to say for me, I think the overarching theme is I think Christensen was okay, maybe even good in the game. But here's like the elephant in the room. Having Christensen in the team, is the team overall better or worse? Because, for example, say today we put Jordan Ayew in the team instead of Bobby Reed, and we were much better, in my opinion. He had a very strong game when he was on the pitch. So what if we took Christensen off and we bring Ricky P into the team and we switch that and attack more down the other side? Are we going to be better or worse? And I would be surprised if we were worse. I think we would be much better, in my opinion. Someone else said, I thought VK adapted the tweets pretty well and looked comfortable in a more advanced position. Seems to be responding to the manager's instructions. I actually agree with that, but whether they are the right instructions is the question. And that's the point that we're making. Is like I'm saying, it's like he is definitely getting better, I feel, game on game and doing okay. But it's like, why have it someone okay when you could have someone else in the team that's great? we'll come back to that later. I think that's an overriding theme. Okay, the man that loves to not pay attention at least once in the game, Wout Fast. Luke, talk to me.
He scared me this game. He made a few scary runs forward where he didn't even have the ball and had to track back. And I thought he was a bit calamitous today, to be honest with you. He was our builder from the back as well with Yannick out, which also didn't really inspire me of confidence. I got to be honest with you, I thought he was poor today. What did you think?
I'll go first before passing to Neil. I think I agree. I think that there was one moment in the first half where the ball came to him and he just dwelt on it, trying to play a pass. And then Morgan Rogers, who you called out fair play to in the pre-match, robbed him of the ball and played Watkins in, and Hermansen had to bail him out. And it's like, I hate things like that because it's a self-inflicted wound, right? And you can be overconfident. I love this. Why does Wout need to act like a streets won't forget player? Yeah, I know what you mean. Like, he feels like he's got to have his moment in the game and do something, whereas just keeping it simple. And yeah, I think definitely of the two, he was not so great today, but I don't think he was disastrous. And again, if I look at the goals, like actually the first goal, just to call it out, was a mistake by Oliver Skipp that leads to the set piece, and he dwelt on it himself. So we'll come to that in a moment. Neil, what did you make of Wout?
I think it's already been said. I think he played a lot better, ironically, when we didn't have the ball, when we had the ball higher up the pitch.
Yeah.
When he was on there, again, I think there was a moment, when was it? Before the first goal, was it after the second goal? After the first goal, sorry. Oh, what was it? About about 28 minutes, where I think they'd already scored. And he's closing in on him, and he just doesn't see him at all. And the more he plays, the more I'm convinced he is David Luiz, because very, very similar in terms of I want to make sure that he's a separate player, but he looks and sometimes he plays like he just forgets where he is. And the problem is in the Premier League, if you do this against a good opposition, they will punish you. And luckily for that, Villa didn't punish us, but I can imagine going forward, that's the case. And how do other Premier League players that don't watch him game to game see him? And what do they remember from him? The 2-0 against Liverpool.
We had the two OGs.
Goals. Now, with performances like this, he was okay for some parts of the game. He was definitely dropped the ball and turned off with some parts. This is what he's going to be remembered for. Not for fans that watch him week in, week out, but for people who watch a short amount of games, what they're going to think of. Wout Faes, 2-0 Liverpool. He scored 2 goals. This kind of performance and them kind of mistakes is going to make people solidify that memory and that opinion of him.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to move on now. This one's interesting because we've had quite some varying comments in the chat about him. So Caleb Okoli, who was a surprise inclusion into the team, I think overall he was pretty good in my opinion. I think the one thing you can label about him is that for that second goal that Villa scored, he was defending Duran, and Duran makes a really good run, gets to it first. And as a defender, I'm not expecting you to get to it first either. And I also think it was a superb goal from him. Like, I have to respect, like, in the moments of quality, Villa did it. But could he have done a bit better? Yes, maybe he could have done a bit better to be a bit more physical. It's how Bobby Reed scored last week for Fulham, right? Against Spurs. He ran in with, who was it? Pedro Porro, but Porro outstrengthened him to get the head away. I mean, the Premier League can be determined by these moments. But what I thought was good about his play is that I think he did like a really good moment in that second half. Do you know when John McGinn almost got in and he had to make a diving challenge and it would either have been a red card or McGinn would have gone through for 3-1? Great clearance. I think in general, he won most of his duels. I think he was actually surprisingly good on the ball. I think he was better on the ball than Faes was. He wasn't doing as much stupid things. And he was also playing with his left foot quite commonly. So, yeah, you go, Sean James, not bad, but some of the passing options he chose weren't that good. Good defensively. It's done my job for me. Maybe I should just retire and get Sean to come on the show and do it for me. But that was my take on him. I'm not trying to call him out like the second coming of Wesley Fofana or Sionchu in that breakthrough season, but I am saying he was better than I expected, and I think he was okay. And I actually think, based on that performance, he may well keep his place for the next game. We'll see. But Neil, you talked to him about Caleb Okoli. What did you make of him?
I think you've done your job quite well, to be honest. I think, and again, remember, he's 23 years old. He's the youngest defender that we've got at the moment, with everybody else being on loan. 23, he's got room to develop, room to move. I think, as you mentioned, his pace, he's powerful. Maybe he doesn't pick the right pass at the right time, but considering today could have gone horribly wrong for him. For what we saw in pre-season, and yes, he did have a good, again, didn't really see him that much against Tranmere, because again, they didn't really have too much of the ball. I think when he was called upon, he delivered. And yes, things could be improved, but I'm very happy. I'm very decently happy for where he is at this moment in time with the room he's got to grow.
Yeah, well, I know someone who, when he's not the fan of the Patson Daka fan club, is he the president of the Caleb Okoli fan club? What do you make of it? Like I say, I'm just scrolling through some of these comments, and like I say, it's really
the comments going.
I'm just going to keep bringing them up as we're talking. But Vesti is absolutely not faster than Okoli. Then we've got Vestergaard is faster than Okoli. Bring the Grain Dane back. He controls the pacing of the game and communicates better with Faes. Lots of gaps between Faes and Okoli. Matt saved the centre backs. There's definitely some elements of truth in that thing. I thought the number 5 did okay. So then we've got Krishna with technically not that great, to be fair, but as a defender, he's good and aggressive. Just need to pair him with a good ball player. So yeah, it's just hilarious to see just where it is. I'm not going to speak for you. Luke, I love your opinions. What did you make of Okoli? What's he good at, bad at overall?
Much improved game, to be honest. If I slagged him off a little bit before the game started. I do think it was a little bit poor. I think he should be forced to shave his head after not jumping to try and clear that ball against Vestergaard. That pineapple didn't do him any favors. But other than that, no, to be fair, I thought he was decent in the ball. He won a lot of his aerial duels, which surprised me. He is a lot faster than Yannick. Going to that comment, you could say we look faster sometimes under Yannick if we have possession and he's playing decent passes. But that was the Championship and this is the Premier League. But what I will say is interesting is you could argue that he is now competing with Yannick after that performance, because I thought Yannick's last game was poor and this game was a lot better for Okoli. Or you could make the argument going to that comment before, as you were just saying, not that was one before that said you need someone that's decent on the ball alongside him. You could argue that how would Okoli look next to Yannick as two centre backs? That to me interests me a lot.
That is the comment that's put here. Brookline's put here, did you see the Okoli McGinn race? McGinn closed 20 yards on him and always went through on goal. That's true, but the thing is, if you look at the body positions, like he already had the first 5 or 10 yards on him because you're not positioned well. And at the end of the day, he did recover it. But I'm not trying to like be the Caleb Okoli defense force here. I'm trying to sort of be a more balanced thing. And I think people that said there, I thought he did okay is probably the accurate reflection. Okay, I'm going to go to some other players and move around a little bit rather than just go through each position specifically. I'm not going to dwell on all of them. We will come to Ndidi just because we could probably spend the entire show on him. But before we go back to Ndidi, I want to talk about this man because, I don't want to say for it. So let's go to you, Luke. What did you make of Jordan Ayew?
I thought, to be fair, he was our man of the match, to be honest with you. I thought he was really good. Massive improvement from Cordova-Reid, particularly with a lot of move and ball breakdown with Cordova-Reid. With Ayew, he was picking a lot of passes. He's very good. Seems like he has like that extra second more time on the ball than everyone else does. He's also drawing a lot of fouls because of that, as we mentioned off it during the game. So wins a lot of free kicks, decent on the ball, picked out some great crosses. I thought he was a much better option than Cordova-Reid. And he, in my opinion, he is better on that left wing than he is as a striker. So, but either or, he can do either job. But I thought he was absolutely brilliant today, to be fair.
Is he better than Mavididi on that left-hand side?
No.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, that's good. I asked you a simple question. I love it. It gives me a simple answer. Neil, what did you make of Jordan Ayew?
I think it could be summed up in a couple of bits. He was fouled. He was fouled a lot, won the ball. And secondly, before half-time, I put he's done more in 45 minutes than Cordova-Reid did in the past 2 games. And I think that sums up going forward, attacking, drawing fouls. I think he was immense. And I mean that genuinely, because what he offered to the team, and as you mentioned before, when you replaced Cordova-Reid with Jordan Ayew, did the team improve? Yes. And not just slightly. I thought he was a definite upgrade on him. So yeah, I know we've got a lot of players to get through, but I'm really, really happy with him without covering too much what Luke was mentioning.
Yeah, interesting here. I get the hype behind Ayew, but however, I think he just slows the game down and maybe not releases the ball quick enough. Great defensive work and getting fouls for us. It is interesting. I mean, I agree with Luke that I think he was actually our best player overall, certainly when he was on the pitch. He just, every single time the ball came to him, he seemed to do something. The amount of times he won the ball back as well was great, and he was providing something. this maybe isn't going to sound like a compliment, but I want it to be. It was like an improved Ayoze Perez, if that makes sense. Like taking a better aspect of Ayoze's play, but actually being a bit more creative on the ball. But at the same time, never really looking like he was going to be the difference maker. Now, I think Mavididi is one of those difference maker type of players. But again, coming back to this point of like stay in the game for 60 minutes and then try and win it or get something from it. Like I do feel, for example, that made it easier for Mavididi when he came on because Ayew's like running ragged a little bit for the first 60 minutes. And so is that the way going forward? Like, you can have starters and finishers. And if that works, even if, as a player, you might feel unhappy that you're only playing 30 minutes every week. But if you're the one that's making a difference, maybe it's something to be said there. So look, I think he had a very good game. Look, for what it's worth, I would start Steffi instead of Ayew, to be honest with you, because I'm more of an attack-minded manager and I think he's got quality. But look, I've got to give the props where it's due. I totally agree with you, Neil. I think since he's been in the team, he's shown way more than Bobby de Cordova-Reid. And he actually looks, I can't believe I'm saying this, like a really solid signing. I can actually see, especially on a 2-year deal, if he's going to play like that every week, he's all Brighton. He's like Ghanaian all Brighton, but I think a bit better, if that makes sense. I think he genuinely, I'm not joking. I think he helped the team get more possession and play higher up the field and to allow the more attacking players later on to do good. And I actually can understand why we've signed him now. And so I want to give him his props. I think it was quite impressive. Right, now I want to move on to Ollie Skipp. So this was a big change that we've made, right? We called it pre-match. Fair play to you, Luke. You were telling me all week, double pivot, skip and wings, basically a text message every single day. Totally agree. So I think it's probably fair to start with you. He played in that position. And look, we did have more possession in the game. It's the first time we had more control in the game overall. He did come off at around 64, Mr. Bilal, who we'll talk about in a moment. What do you think of Ollie Skipp's performance? Just before I do that, someone just brought up, is a Trossard type of player, either Mavididi or Ayew. Yeah, that's kind of what I'm getting at. Maybe that is the thing. So yeah, talk to me about Skipp.
I really, really thought if between him and I were actually my best players on the pitch today, you could give a fair shout for Winks, but no, Skipp very, very good. Seems to me as well that he gets a little bit further up the pitch with his possession as that double pivot than Winks will. Winks almost be that last man. But I was really, really impressed with him today. Very similar again to Winks, but also a few cheeky little tactical fouls as well, which is good to see. I love that side of the game. But mate, I think this is probably, I want to see more yet. It's early days, but in my opinion, this has been the biggest impact of all the signings straight away into the side as they've been integrated, in my opinion. I know it's early days and that could totally change, but we just look so much better on the ball with him in our starting 11. And I think he's a starter every game here on out.
Yeah. Neil, what did you make of Skippy?
I agree with what Luke says, but I think Ayew has delivered more and offered more in this game and added more than Skipp has. And that's not me to talk down about Skipp. I think Skipp was great. I think his defensive work, his time for a challenge, I think one was slightly off, which led to actually the set piece goal that they scored. But I thought he was great. He understands what he's trying to do, win the ball back, sometimes just play a 3-yard pass, or whether he's trying to bring other people into the game. Yeah, I thought he had a really solid game. And I can see why we've spent that amount of money on him. Still think it's too much, but I can see why we've spent that money on him.
I would say that's probably the going rate for a Premier League experienced player at 23. So whether or not you like paying that much or not is a different question, but I would say that. But some interesting things there. So here's Sean's gone, free kick wasn't his fault, but I didn't really notice Skipp on the pitch, didn't get in the way. I think the free kick was his fault, to be totally honest with you. I think he dwelt on the ball. I think it was the only really big error he made in the game. And unfortunately, that is the brutality of the Premier League, that you're having a good game, you make one half mistake and they end up scoring from it. And there was a few Villa fans in the chat. Fair play. The quality showed Yuri Tillemans thinking cleverly ahead. They obviously had practiced it on the pitch and they scored. But I do agree with both of you. Someone's put it tired, but Skipp is like Ndidi if he was press resistant. And that's basically the point. And as we were saying, for me, the biggest issue in the first two league games is that we were dominated, in the game. The other team had a lot more possession, which meant we could never really get going, which is why it was hard to make chances. In this game, the biggest change we made is we put Ndidi up, we brought Skipp into the team, and it meant that we got the passes together. We were able to control the game and we were in it. But the downside is that in playing those three, we didn't make as much as we could do. So that could be either an Ndidi or a Skipp problem, which is what we're saying. But I agree with you, Luke. I think he was really good. I was thinking that Ricardo should be playing next to Winks like we did last season. But I can understand. Firstly, I think we needed to. You and I, Luke, said at the end of last season, we must sign someone to be Harry Winks' deputy in case he gets injured. So regardless, we've got that. But what we didn't think is if he signed a really good player, maybe he could play with Winks, because Ricardo, whilst he can do a job in the Championship, would you be able to play that position in the Premier League? I don't know, because he's never tried it, right? So I don't think you can really say if he is or isn't. It's unfair to say someone like, who knows? Maybe I would beat Usain Bolt in a 100 meters race. You don't know until it's happened, right? Well, maybe that's a bit going over the top, but you know what I mean. Do you want to comment out on that, Luke, before I just move on? I'm curious what you think of that.
Of what? Sorry, Skipp?
Yeah.
Yeah, and the replacement role. Yeah, so like I just basically, mate, you just read my thoughts, mate. There's nothing to add to that.
No worries. Okay, let's move on to a couple of players that made like some really big impact. So Steffi Mavididi, I mean, wonderful skill to absolutely roast Bogard there, puts the ball in. Actually, Ndidi got an assist, hashtag just saying. He crossed it into Ndidi. Ndidi wins the header. It doesn't go in, but he wins it. He wins the aerial duel. And Buonanotte, he will come to in a moment with a great finish. Delighted for him to get a goal. But what did you make of Steffi when he came on the pitch?
Me, okay. I think Steffi, every single time, in my opinion, Steffi should be the starter and allowed longer to cook, and Ayew should be the finisher if you want to talk starters and finishers. I think that, like, there was a comment earlier that said that Ayew slows the ball down too much. I disagree. He can't, if you're going to lay a pass off quickly or the ball, it's got to be to someone that's going to keep it the right pass. But Mavididi has the ability to take on his man at a higher pace, dribble past his man, and also pick out that pass that we just talked about. So, in my opinion, he's got a lot more flair. He's got so much to his wheelhouse, and I can't comprehend why he's not starting more. But like every single time he's come on, the game changes, and he offers more down that left-hand side in particular.
I agree. Neil?
So I want to take it back to last season where he didn't really have any competition. It was just him doing everything. And when you have that, you get complacent. Now, with Ayew coming into the team and showing this at the levels, and he is Premier League more, he's got more Premier League experience and more experience overall as an older player. I think that he was really good. He had his defender on toast for parts. And this is something that we talked about, Steffi, that could he take the step up to the Premier League? Because it's all good, well and good doing it in the in the Championship. Just like Fatal, we saw, I think we mentioned it when we were watching the game together. You can see him figuring it out in real time. Fatal going, okay, I can't do that. I can't do what I used to do in the Championship because Luca Digne is a great, lots of Premier League experience, European experience as well. Great defender, played for international for France as well. So you can't just knock a ball past him and go, "I'll see you later." Because no, I'll follow you all the way. So yeah, I was really impressed with Mavididi actually, what he managed to do today, how he came off the fence, the fact that he was robbed of an assist, in my opinion. Wilfred Ndidi technically gets the assist, but all the work for that goal, up to getting the ball across, beating a man, putting the cross in, was done by Mavididi. And there was question marks around him. And yes, if it doesn't work out, we've still got Jordan Ayew. And I think that's really good competition for places because I wouldn't mind either of them starting as long as the other person comes in and finishing, because I think we've got competition for places. We've got two people for each position. And I think that's really needed in this squad.
Yeah, well said there. You've got that rotation of options. Both can do a job. Sean said they've got someone on the bench to break up a position play by winning fouls in Ayew, and you've got someone that can drive at someone. I agree with both of you that he should be someone that attacks the game. Someone said, can we talk about Bilal? We will, but just 1 second. We'll get to that in a moment. That will be coming next. The next thing I just want to talk about, though, quickly before we go to that, because maybe it's one reason why we needed Bilal, to be honest with you, where we can draw it in. So Luke talked to me beforehand, when we did the pre-match preview, about the way that Villa push up with their high line, which we saw in this game. And that means there's always the option to get in behind by playing the ball over the top. But I've got to say, I just think we were awful at it today. There were so many times in both the first and second half where it was like the default option and we just gave it away. And it's like, yes, that option is on, but you've got to do it when you've got a chance of getting there. Like a lot of the time, we just played it over the top aimlessly. And Martinez was just like, oh, thanks a lot. I'll just take the ball and Villa will get out of trouble. And I think we went for that option too much. And maybe that's because we didn't have enough creativity in the team, which we'll come to in a second. But Luke, seeing as you definitely raised this in the pre-match preview, why do you think we went for it so often when it wasn't working? And, what do you think we need to do better because we're going to play Villa again at some point this season. What have we got to do to beat that?
You raise an interesting point because I think it's a recurring theme, actually, even remove the high line from it. I think that we've been playing too many balls over the top and not maintaining the ball, and I think it's been quite frustrating. I think Christian's at the heart of a lot of those issues because of, if you look at any time that like Mavididi gets the ball down that left-hand side and picks a pass out, like that 1-2 Ndidi at Fulham, I think it was, or Tottenham, he stops, looks, picks out the pass if it's going to be an aerial ball. Whereas with Christensen, I just feel like let's just run down this wing and just hit and hope that it hits someone's head. There's no meticulousness to it, so it's quite frustrating. I think to beat this high line, I think we do obviously need the creativity in the midfield. Particularly, the most frustrating thing of this as well is we can't stretch them and play them wide because of how much they congest that midfield under Unai Emery. So you can't get the best out of the likes of Mavididi or Fatawi. They're kind of forced to drift in a lot more centrally. Otherwise, we're going to get rinsed in the middle. So I'm personally, in my opinion, to beat it would actually be something kind of similar to what they do, only have one wide player, and that's the man that runs past his man and like takes the ball down, and then everyone else moves with it. That's the pressing trigger. But I'm not sure. I'm not Luke Guardiola, but what does Neil think?
Too humble there. I'll come to you, Neil, but I do want to touch on a point that Luke just made there. So maybe you can comment on this, Neil, which is that it is true that the amount of sort of long balls that we play compared to when we played with Enzo is definitely a big change, right? We definitely just saw some of those moves. Like we were watching the game and Ndidi ran down the channel and did the little dinks cross and everyone's like, there it is. That's the move that Enzo brought into the team. And we did it a few times the other side too, but we definitely go more direct at times. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So that's part of this kind of whole thing. And are we basically guilty of forcing it? Trying to do too much too soon, rather than trying to be a bit more patient. I think fans would say we were too patient last season. We've gone a little bit back from that. What do you think?
I think the quality of the ball wasn't good enough. I think that's the main problem with it. Justin, Faes, I would say the two people that were trying it the most, and it just didn't end up working out. Will it do? Cool, probably in the future. And there is that. I remember Castro Michael saying when we won the league, why take one pass when we can do it? Why take 7 passes when we can do it in one? Which I understand and I think would be good. However, with that, I just think it was off today. The passing out from the back, it just didn't really work. With that, I think you've got a really good opportunity to not try and do it from the back, try and give it to midfield, because I think the midfield positions in Harry Winks and Oliver Skipp would be able to offer you a lot more of this. So other than that, I've not got too much else to say.
No worries.
Sorry.
Well, okay. Go, Luke. Yeah.
Just to quickly add to what Neil was saying, I think for that, everything you just said at the end there, for that to work, I think we need to have Mads Hermansen playing further out the goals, because I think that move starts. We can get the ball progressing at the pitch further and sooner. The higher up Mads has the ball. That's just my opinion for that, but we have to maintain possession to be able to do so. Sorry, move on.
No worries. I think Scott's on the money here. Here's where I would go for it. Or he's saying, or is it that we're not moving the ball fast enough between the lines instead of over the top too often? I think we were guilty of that. I think having those midfield three, we had a lot of the ball, but there was a time I remember, I think it was either in the early of the second half, where our back three just played it between them for about 2 or 3 minutes. And it was like, okay, but what are you going to do with this? You're not doing anything with it. Villa were happy for us to do that, like have that possession. You're not hurting us. You need to do something to actually drag us out of position and make something happen. But in terms of making something happen, so it was the triple sub that really kicked this game into gear. And we were very excited to see the debut of Bilal El Khannouss in the team, who I've misspelled. I've just realized in this slide that editor, which is me, is getting absolutely fired in the morning. So great to see him in the team. It was interesting to see that he drifted around a bit. So he did originally come on for Skipp, but what happened is Skipp, indeed, he moved back into the double pivot, and Bilal played as where indeed he was playing previously as the 10. But I certainly noticed that he was drifting around the park quite a lot. You could see he really wanted the ball. He was trying to get involved, laying off some passes. So what did we make of him? look, it's just his debut, right? As I don't think we can really jump at conclusions, but I think it was exciting to see him play. So, Neil, let me come to you first. What did you make of Beck, the debut?
I didn't really notice him too much. He was playing when we was thinking about substitution, because the substitutions happened at 68 minutes. Going forward, some people might have said we need to make substitutions earlier, which I understand. However, the team was doing really well up to that point. Really well. We just, again, didn't have that creativity, but we were retaining possession. In that second half, we ended up getting a lot more of the ball. We ended up rotating the ball a little bit more. But when he was substituted off, they brought off Skipp we put in Buonanotte, they brought in Khannouss, and we put on Mavididi. But we brought off Ayew, we brought off Ayew, so that was our width. And then we brought on Skipp, which meant that we were pushing a single pivot in Harry Winks. And then we were playing, then after that, we put Khannouss alongside. I think he had one good pass alongside to Christensen, which I thought was really good. And you can see that he's instinctive. He's not thinking about the passes too much. Some of the best creative players just don't think, they just pass. And the ball slowed down really nicely for Christian to put across him, which he didn't quite do. But I didn't notice him too much in the game, but I can see he's off a really good point.
Luke, what did you make of Bilal?
I thought it was really, really good on the ball. I think I need to see him get a bit more time, like more minutes playing before I give like a fair assessment. But I definitely think that there's a player in there and of quality, and I'm very, very optimistic and see what the future holds for this lad. So I think he could be a proper good signing. Good line breaking passes. Good comment by Sean. I'm curious to see what you thought of him, but like he kind of reminded me a little bit, to be honest with you, of like Yuri Telemann vibes, not with his like finishing for goals, but kind of being able to set the play from further up the back. So having those options of him on potentially in front of Winks and Skipp would be really, really, really good. It's just kind of tricky to, do you see him playing in the starting 11 of Buonanotte, or do you think they're like for like subs for one another?
I think Bilal is starting. I think that Yuri Tillemann's example is really good, except he seemed a lot more mobile, which is a lot more important. And for what it's worth, he had 100% passing accuracy on his debut, 15 out of 15 passes. I agree with Neil. I didn't really notice him in the game in terms of impacting it, but he was drifting around. He was always asking for the ball. He wanted to get involved. That's great for a player who, is just making their debut, that he's trying to show something. And I think, unlike the person who will come to in a moment, which is Buonanotte, what I think was good about him, and it might sound almost a bit odd that I'm saying this, is I think he did not try to force it. So, what tends to happen is you want to be the hero. And you're like, yeah, I'm the debut boy. Give me the ball. I'm going to shoot from 30 yards out. I'm going to keep trying to Hollywood pass. I'm going to be the savior. We're going to be 2-2 or 3-2 thanks to me. But he didn't do that. He was just moving the ball quickly. He was more like, I know what the system is. I know who my players are. I'll make the right pass at the right time, and I'm not going to force it. So this is probably the best comment. Looked pretty good for a few days after signing him. Confident in movement and seemed to interact well with the other players. Definitely a player who tangibly improves the starting 11. I agree with that. And I think if you can facilitate him, he will make stuff happen. My expectation is then he will come in instead of Ndidi as the 10 to begin with. I think especially as it's Palace that we're playing next. Maybe if we're playing someone as good as Villa, they won't do that change. But that would be my expectation, I think. I'm going to bring up something from Neil, because do you want to talk to me here? Is this about his positioning?
This is just about the positioning of all the people that came on. So 68 minutes, we made some subs. So this is from SofaScore as well. So the same one that Anil was showing you earlier as well. But you can see there's how close average position-wise he was to Jamie Vardy, which I found strange. I didn't notice it in the game. Buonanotte again playing on that right-hand side in position, and Mavididi playing. So Christensen again very high up in possession with that same position. But yeah, I think overall it just shows you again, what's nice is that we complained against the Fulham game that we didn't make the right subs at the right time, or we didn't want to win the game. This position and these players that we decided to play shows you that we were genuinely trying to. You see that Harry Winks was that holding midfielder. And then you've got, the attackers, you just need to go and do what you need to do.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the reason for that is more because this is average pitch position. It just kind of hints more that Vardy was playing and dropping deep to be more of a false nine. I think it shows you that Bilal, who's taken Mark Albrighton's number, which is quite big shoes to fill, but I've got a feeling he will fill them, was playing as the creative number 10, but willing to both go deep and push forward. I think there's not much to say about him right now. Let's not sort of like over-egg something that did or didn't happen, but excited to see him. He's making an impact, and we'll see what kind of happens. I think I'll just move on to this guy then, because this again, he scored, so great for him. I think he should have already got an assist this season if Vardy put one away. So Facundo Buonanotte came into the team. He scored. He definitely made an impact. Now, what's interesting is he came on for Fatawu. So previously he's been playing as a 10, but he also showed that he can be an option for Fatawu coming on, and he's actually scored. So he scored more Premier League goals than Fatawu so far. So what did we make of Buonanotte's game? I've already mentioned a few things here. He got a 7.2 rating for what it's worth coming on, although scoring will tend to do that. So Luke, I'll start with you. What did you make of Facundo?
Really, I'm really liking the look of this guy. I'm actually thinking that we might lose him in January. I don't even think we can get a whole season if he keeps playing the way he's going. Again, we've touched on this before. Very, very physical for his size. The ability to be able to keep the ball and progress the ball up the pitch is very impressive. He looks confident. He looks like he wants the ball. Like he looks like, give the ball to me. I'm going to make it happen. It's not stupid like where you would sometimes see like too much of trying to be the hero, like you would see with James Maddison sometimes. So I think I'm really, really liking the look of this. Like they say, don't fall in love with a lone player, but like he is my love child at the minute.
Do you think he was trying too hard though, just to play devil's advocate? Because I think after he scored, he kept trying to sort of score from some stupid angles, and there was like a bit right at the end where there was 7 minutes left, and he could have made the pass, but instead of making a pass, he was trying to be all Hollywood. Look, for a 19-year-old, he's feeling confident. You know what I mean?
If you've scored though, like then he's got the right, in my opinion, to be able to do that. Like you don't achieve greatness without trying. And like if he's skying shots over the ball all the time and not scoring, not laying off a pass, like when people would slag off Harvey Barnes, yeah, sure, no worries. But if he scored, then why not? It's not like he skied one over like crazy, like Ayew from a free kick. So I think that's harsh.
I'll tell you, the reason I've got a YouTube channel is that's exactly what Neil said to me. It says you don't achieve greatness without trying, so you better make that channel. So there you go. You can blame him. But Neil, you talk to me about Facundo Buonanotte.
Well, saying that, mate, I've told you for a while, and then you're like, no, don't plug anything. And now look what's happened. No, but I'm really glad you got it. He was trying too hard, and that's okay for a young player. The thing is, when we went down, the reason why is because nobody cared. People are giving up. People are thinking about the next move. I don't mind a young player trying this, but he has to learn where, yes, he scored the goal. And he thinks, you know what? I can take on the world. I can do everything myself. It's not always going to happen like that. But I don't mind it because it shows that they give a toss, basically. And that's something that we can't say before. So took his goal well, popped him in good positions. And I'm really excited to see how he develops under us. But again, now that we've got Bilal, I feel less that we've just got one person just to rely on to get us out of trouble. Because I think he's been great in the games that's come in so far. And his ceiling at 20 years old is mind-boggling.
Yeah, I mean, I wish we had a buy option on him. This guy looks like a properly good player. I think the problem is you would have to pay 40 million for him. I think if someone asked that for him, you'd be like, fair enough. He looks good enough. Like if he's this good now, how good is he going to be? He looks very good. Look, I'm going to stop going through the players now and give more of a summary. If you guys could help me, I wouldn't mind if we could bring up the Premier League table and the results, because there's definitely a mini table kind of going on and some sort of overall comments. So I'll start with a negative, but I don't necessarily disagree with this. So this is a Clibo. Unfortunately, we're not good enough. Cooper will get my support, but we're already up against it. Staying up would be up there with some of our greatest achievements after the points deduction. Yes, I don't think that's unfair to say. This is definitely going to be a tough season. But look, I think we've been competitive in every single game. I think despite the score today, this is probably the most competitive we've been in. I think we've got to ask more questions of the opposition. I think that's maybe the one weakness. That said, I do felt after it went 2-1, I thought there was going to be another goal in the game, although I thought it would be either we get the equaliser or they catch us on the break. So we were asking, maybe the impatience of some of the young players kind of harmed us. We didn't have Edouard playing today, who was just watching from the sidelines. That would have been another option. And I'll bring up the table in a second. But just Neil, one thing that you mentioned at the start of the show, which I agree with, is that by the end, we just basically threw the kitchen sink at them. We just kept putting on attacker after attacker after attacker. And I think Cooper does deserve some respect for that. Like he wasn't, trying to play it out. He was really, really going for it. So you talk to me about that while I bring up the table here, which we're looking at. I mean, look at that. We're in 15th place. Stop the count, lads. Stop the count. What are we doing?
Yeah, exactly that. But coming into, I'm with you again. Edouard didn't get the bench. Cody didn't get the bench. Chowdhury didn't get the bench. Something else that I noticed when you were speaking as well. If you look at the bench, Iverson got the nod against Ward, just as a backup keeper. Don't know if there's anything to read into that, especially since the window is closed. But it's interesting to note as well that Ward was also sitting with them three, not playing in the game. Anyway, coming into this again, what was the point you mentioned? I got completely sidetracked. Oh, kitchen sink. Yes, Operation Kitchen Sink. So again, we decided to take off Ndidi, put on 88 minutes, then put on Decode Reed, and again, Okoli putting on for McAteer, who was 92 minutes. Again, we decided to go for it. We thought, look, we've not got the opportunity. We're not going to win this game unless we have a go. We're going to fight. We'd rather lose this game 3-1 and have a go rather than try and sit and defend. So yeah, I'm really happy with the fact that we gave players like Okoli and Decode Reed, which I didn't really notice in the game too much because they only had about 10 minutes, less than that, to try and have an impact on the game. But we tried to go and give it something. And at the end of the day, we are trying.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just seeing some absolutely amazing comments here. Brookline, the genius, inverted commas, of Unai Emery appears to be training his team to foul every time our midfielder gets a touch in the centre of the pitch. The referee also had to tell them off for time wasting. So they were definitely guilty of the dark arts. And that is my point, is like, look, I'll give respect to Villa. Emery's a great manager. They had 2 real moments of quality to bag 3 points, but it's almost like that's the mark of a good team. Now, I think they played quite badly overall, but they still got 3 points. Whereas I think, honestly, if they'd have lost that game, you could sort of understand why. But and then just quickly, I think Diego's put this, which I think is a very fair point. Look, in my opinion, Cooper's lost us this match. He should have made the subs in the moment Villa made theirs. We didn't match them. They took their chance to look vulnerable at that point, which is game management, which is right. Like you have to respect Emery that as soon as he saw that we got our first goal and he saw that Bogard could not contain Mavididi, he made the change. He was brave enough to substitute a substitute because he knew that to break up the game and make the changes. And I guess what Diego is saying is maybe we should have made counter changes ourselves. He did also wait for 68 minutes before making any changes. There was that moment, certainly after John Duran scored, where Harry Winks just looked so upset. I could see why he was upset because we'd played quite well and like, how are we 2-0 down? But we were. Right. So maybe some things to think about. Luke, you talk to me about that and also the table, because I think already someone's already a few guys are bringing this up already, which is that like we're only this high up because Everton are bottle jobs. I guess it's good that we're not last, but if you look at the points deductions, we are last. I mean, that was always kind of to be expected. So it's interesting. This is how it's sort of shaping up. I've got a feeling that this could well be the mini league already, this bottom 5. So, Luke, talk to me about the changes in the game, and also, we've got Palace next as well. What we're thinking for the rest of the season.
I think, yeah, you could argue. Look, I can't believe I'm being kind of somewhat defensive of Cooper, but like, yeah, I can see totally where I can see where Diego was coming from. But like, I can't get past how much possession we had today. Like, I feel like other than that one goal, we look like the better side in a lot of the game. With way less quality. But in my opinion, like when we 1 goal down, it didn't look that dire, like we're screaming for subs. But the second that second goal goes in, then it's all of a sudden, yeah, definitely we need to make changes. It comes back to the creativity in the midfield. I don't think the Crystal Palace are going to shape up anything like that. So I think it's going to be a completely different game. But I'm not entirely sure. Unlike. Because Enzo, if you think about it, could be very painful with his subs as well, to be fair. And we love Enzo. We used to. Now he's a snake in the grass. But you know what I mean?
I totally agree. Well, look, where we're kind of getting to, I mean, look, I've got to say that the next match after the international break is huge. I think, I'm not even sure if a draw is enough. I think we've got to get the win against Palace, because if I look at this mini table, this is what the season's going to be. And so every time you play Ipswich, Palace, Southampton, Everton, Wolves, maybe there might be 1 or 2 teams that join us in this little mini league, but it's going to be a 6-pointer and we're going to have to get so. I mean, some kind of comments here. We had so much possession, but no end products. I kind of agree with that. I mean, to be honest with you, for me, this is certainly what I feel like. Positives are we are not losing by a lot, but we are having a lot of shots against us, and especially shots on target against us. Well, at the other end, not quite comparing to the opposition. I think that's probably, if I can give an award, the comment of the day. So I will give Cooper credit. So this is the first game where we've definitely managed to fix some issues in previous games. So now we managed to have more possession. And even if we don't have as much possession as the opposition, you don't want it as a massive goal. So you at least in the game, it's a pretty containing game and you can make something. So that's a good improvement. But as people have said here, we haven't scored more than the goal a game. And we're not really, if you look at the XGs, the XG against Fulham was 0.5. Today it was only 0.37, despite the fact that I think we had more possession. And that surprises me. I felt like we looked more likely to score than that. But whether you believe in those statistics or not, what does tend to happen is at the end of the season, the amount of XG you got is relative to how many goals that you scored. Here's interesting. I didn't know this. I knew some of our fixtures. The next 7 matches are Palace, Everton. So that's 2 absolutely huge ones. Arsenal, then Bournemouth, Southampton, Forest, Ipswich. I think that needs to be a minimum 11 points from Tyler. I didn't realize they were our games, but wow. It's like by the end of that Ipswich game, it could either be that like it's on, lads, it's absolutely on, or it's off. It's off. Delete the channels. See you next season in the Championship. It honestly feels like could be either. Diego, this 7-game stretch is where Cooper's fate is sealed. IMO. Talk to me about that. And then also, if someone could maybe bring up just the results from today, that would be great. But I'll tell you, Neil, you talk to me then about this next 7 fixtures. What do you think?
Oh, that is it. That again, that as bad as it sounds, that is part of it as well. So, looking into this game, but overall, we have that is. I didn't even realize looking at those games after that game. Just to let people know, after that, it's Man United, Chelsea, Brentford, West Ham, Brighton, Newcastle, Wolves, Liverpool, Man City until the end of the year. So it's quite a mixed bag. Even towards the end of the year, we've still got a lot of teams, but if we keep playing and we're developing, remember, we're in the infant stages and we've got a squad and we're going to be working on this international break. This is only the beginning of the Cooper reign and hopefully we'll be able to take it off. Look at what, again, look at an example of what Eddie Howe did at Newcastle. It took a while to get them really into the squad and that was later on. And they were rock bottom of not the Premier League, but about second to bottom. We beat them 4-0, 5-0 at the beginning of that season. They ended up staying up and they went up to all the way to Champions League. Champions League, sorry. They went up to be safe, but top of the top 10. We could do something similar. Now we've got a certain squad in place. We've got new management in. And I think more time we give, we've got something to work with. Again, the results are all that matters, but I'm really happy and really impressed with what I see compared to what we saw in pre-season. I thought that we were going to be in the same position as a Southampton or an Everton because we look dire in pre-season. We've had so much improvement since then.
That's true. And I don't know if you guys have ever heard about, there's a famous season in the Premier League. It was 2014-2015 season. So the reason why that season was interesting is there was a team that was bottom of the league for 7 months. They looked absolutely doomed. And then somehow they managed to survive. And that team was Leicester. So I guess it kind of doesn't matter, but you have to remember that season we did not have a points deduction. So that is going to be certainly a challenge. But Luke, how are you feeling about this next 7-game run? And also, can we just take a moment to laugh at Everton? They were 2-0 up in the 87th minute, and they've managed. I think they might have out Leicester. Do you remember when we lost to Spurs?
Yeah,
they conceded. Look at this. They conceded. That is brutal. That is brutal. And you know what though? That happened at their own ground as well. I mean, that is, I think, encouraging for us because someone being low morale. I mean, just before I hand over to you, Luke, I mean, I just want to say, as crazy as this sounds, though, that I only think that there's 2 games this season where I don't think we have a chance, which is Man City and Arsenal. I don't expect us to get points against certain other teams, but the way that we're playing, we have good players, we're solid, and we're competitive. I do think the quality is the issue, right? I mean, that's what I'm not seeing is how are we going to score enough goals? That definitely is my issue, is that the XG doesn't lie. And it's like, actually, whilst you need to have a defense that isn't, Sheffield United bad quality, you've got to score goals. I'm going to bring this up in the background, but I'm pretty sure that last season, Burnley went down because they scored less than 40 goals. So they didn't even average a goal a game. It's like, if you can't do that, you've got 0 chance. But Luke, tell me about the run of fixtures that we've got and how are you feeling?
Pull it back up if you could, please. Okay, I've got it here. Okay, so Palace are decent side, but like the likes of Everton, Bournemouth, Southampton, Forest, Ipswich, big. I'm with Diego. That to me seals where we're going with Cooper. But yeah, we are only scoring one goal a game. But something to think about before these next 7 fixtures of this international break. We're going to have a lot more time to get Bilal and all the players that have come in late in the window. Eduardo, time to settle into the team and integrate, train with the lads, get used to one another. So I think that's going to be big as well. So what's up?
All I'm saying is Cooper got a draw against Pep before, and he can again. Laughing face. Scott, interesting. You think you have a chance against Chelsea and Liverpool? Chelsea ain't all that. Liverpool, yeah, I could see why you might think I'm smoking crack, but I just think the new manager, the way that they're playing is a bit more controlling, and basically just is those top 2 teams are easily the best 2 teams. Like they're playing the best stuff. Like I also think Man City signed Gundogan. Elite, obviously he was their previous player, how good he is. And it's interesting that Arsenal this season side Marino, who's 28, and Sterling, who's 29. So they're like, we don't care about the future, we care about now, we care about this season, and we care about winning things. So that's why I think they're good. But sorry to cut you off there, Luke. Yeah, I do very much agree with you, though. I do feel that I agree with you, but I sort of don't, right? Because the thing is that as weird as the Premier League is, right, is that as long as there's a chance to get out, you always have a chance. So there is the possibility that we end up in this sort of like, okay, we get into the last third of the season and there's 4 teams at the bottom that are cut adrift. But as long as it's 4 teams, not 3, as long as you finish top of that mini league, you'll still stay up. And like, while I don't think it could happen, you could stay up. Like last season, Nottingham Forest stayed up with 32 points. Right, which is a crap points tally. You should be ashamed of yourselves to get 32 points. To be fair, they had a points deduction, right? But they still stayed up on it. So you never really know this. So it is still possible if you have a bad start that you can still recover. That's why it's over a league. And Neil's point about it's building something, and we are sort of building something, and that's maybe what we want to do. Here we go. Look, even if we get a 6-point deductions, Russell Martin Southampton exist, and we won 9-1 against them last year. Absolutely brutal. Don't ever piss off Tyler; he'll have you. But I mean, I absolutely agree. That's brilliant.
He's right, and he's not going to learn his lessons.
I agree. You can tell already that they haven't got any points.
These are all good comments, and you guys are talking about it. But like, you got to remember though that those 7 matches, if we were to get like a lot of points out of that, and then we get hit with a points deduction, the guys are going to be feeling confident, relaxed, and it's going to be like, okay, look, we've had this points deduction, but look what we've just done. We push on ahead. Whereas if we get a bad string of luck, and even if you come, good late on the season, it's a lot harder to do so when you've got the point deduction looming over your head. It's a lot more added stress and pressure, in my opinion. So I think that like getting these results now and out the way is more important. And that's why I'm in the bandwagon of I would rather have the points deduction later, because it's if you have points deduction right from the get-go, you have 2 or 3 losses and the teams are gelling, it now becomes a lot more pressure chamber, in my opinion. But that's just me. I think, it's crucial.
I think you're right. And I think that's probably a good place to kind of round things off. So, yeah, we got the first break now of the season, which can be good or bad. But I think we've got the potential of the squad. And I think I speak for the team here when I say that overall, despite a defeat, we're not despondent. We can see positives, but now we have to take this good vibes or positives and we have to get something tangible from it. And this next 7 games, barring the Arsenal one, we've got to get something out of it, because if we don't, we might find ourselves cut adrift too early. But I think we think that of the teams that have come up or are in this sort of bottom 4 or 5, that I think right now we're feeling that we're better than them, right? That could change, but would that be fair to say that right now we think we're better than those teams?
Better than Southampton, better than Everton. However, Everton have just got Sean Dyche, and Sean Dyche just knows how to shithouse results. And
not today he didn't know, did he?
Huh? No,
not
you're
today
right.
He didn't. Yeah.
And I've got every season I write Everton off, and every season they come back from it. But I think maybe this year might be that step 1 too far. If that happens, then we are the team that then that plays into our hands, really. And the team that's down there that I don't think will be down there, because I think there's a few, if I get the Premier League table up now, Ipswich, I think Wolves will end up escaping, and I think Crystal Palace might end up escaping out of it as well. So, yeah, that's some things I've got to mention, but I think we'll be okay. It's just depending on who else we can get. And we just got to start, again, as Luke said, get the point deduction later, try and build momentum for now. And then, as we saw, it's not the end of the world. Everton still had 2 point deductions and stayed up. Nottingham Forest had 1 point deduction and stayed up as well. So it's possible.
I will say, though, these next 2 games, if we were to get 6 points out of them, wow, it really would be on. You get 0, could be in trouble. Luke, you finished the show for me then. What are we thinking?
Closing thoughts. Let's go back to the drawing board. The players don't look like they're that flustered with one another. It doesn't look like nowhere near as like uncohesive as the preseason game. So let's work with that. Let's build upon that with the new additions to the squad with the international break. And let's go into this Crystal Palace game feeling positive and confident, because right now it still looks like the players are confident and willing to tackle the game, particularly when we've gone 1-0. When we've scored or got an equaliser in all of our games, it's like the momentum change has been ridiculous. Whereas at this game, it wasn't really that, because of how much possession we had, that, you know, I still think that there's the wins there for the taking. We just got to be a bit more attacking minded and just believe in ourselves on the ball. And just, that's my final thoughts.
Agree with you. So I think that's our closing thoughts. Positive signs, but room for improvement. Thank you so much for joining us on the Instant Match Reaction. Thank you so much to Neil at Beyond the 90. Thank you so much to Luke at Leicester City Down Under. If you like the show, please like, subscribe to all of the channels that are on here. Otherwise, have a good one. Thank you for your company. And stay tuned for the post-match analysis later on the channel. And otherwise, we'll be seeing you in September for Crystal Palace. Come on, Leicester. See you later, guys. Bye-bye.